Welcome back. This is the third video in a three-part series on the Canelo Bivol fight. This video is going to look at Canelo's offense and Bivol's defense. And let's get started with Canelo's offense. A fighter's ability to box in their rhythm is closely tied to their ability to control the range the fight takes place at. Keeping Canelo out of range gave Bivol the time and unobstructed vision to observe Canelo's movement, and his mobile footwork forced Canelo to continually walk him down, giving Bivol more opportunities to pick up on the rhythmic movement patterns Canelo made when he moved around in his stance. Bivol shut down Canelo's jab by using his reach advantage, constant footwork to control distance, and a high jab volume timed for Canelo's forward lean. Canelo had to apply pressure while unable to work behind his jab. This meant Canelo had to rely more on breaking his rhythm with feints and explosive footwork and punching to close the distance and back Bivol up. Having to use explosive movements just to close the distance is a very energy-intensive way to apply pressure, and contributed to him gassing in the second half of the fight. Let's look at a few examples of Canelo breaking rhythm, which usually got Bivol to back up. Canelo breaks his stance rhythm with a slight hip feint that gets Bivol to shell up. Canelo uses his lead hand feint to set up multiple punches, the jab, cross, and lead hook. Here he sets up the jab twice with it. Similar to how his right hand flicks out to counterbalance his slip left lead uppercut, Canelo's lead hand feint counterbalances his slip right cross. Canelo's lead hand feint implies he's looking to attack from his forward lean, which sets up his 1-2 after he pulls back from front to even. Bivol's jab feint draws the parry and slip left. Bivol's low lead hand in range leaves him open for the jab. Canelo keeps the pressure on with a lead hand feint to set up his 1-3-2. When on or near the ropes, Canelo feinted to get Bivol to back up. When Canelo did jab, it was often into Bivol's guard, but when he got into mid-range, he threw power punches aimed around and through the guard. Bivol kept his arms vertical in his guard, which leaves openings between the gloves and behind the elbows and ears. Bivol would step back or pivot around while Canelo was punching, in order to create distance while Canelo's feet were planted momentarily to generate power. Tap lead uppercut to bring guard forward, then lead body hook. Tap jabs to bring guard forward, then rear hook. Rear hook around the guard, lead uppercut between, then lead body hook around. Rear hook around guard, rear uppercut between. Step into close range, then 2 rear hooks. In the second round, Bivol attempted to deal with Canelo's close-range attacks by stepping in and pushing him. It wasn't very effective, so he abandoned this tactic after the round, though he started pushing again in later rounds after Canelo had started gassing. fatigue set in during the later rounds, Canelo had less success with these close-range attacks. He was less able to generate enough power to back Bivol up, and left openings by not returning his hands to his face after punching. Bivol knew he was gassing and started countering and applying pressure. Another of Canelo's tactics to back Bivol up was to explode in with a power shot in order to get Bivol to step back, and step in with another power shot before Bivol had set his feet, forcing him to step back again. In order to back up quickly to avoid these power shots, Bivol would often lean onto his back foot, requiring a split second longer than usual to set his feet. This gave Canelo another opportunity to attack. While they back Bivol up, many of these punches are also blocked. Bivol preferred to shell up and step back when Canelo feinted or attacked. He may have came into the fight assuming correctly that trying to time counters during Canelo's combos is a type of fight that plays to Canelo's strengths, and his chances of landing were better when setting up his offense behind his jab. Bivol does start countering in the late rounds, but that is mainly due to Canelo leaving his hands down after punching. As the next clips show, it can be hard to counter Canelo. Even though Bivol times his step back perfectly and punches immediately, his counter still misses. Canelo also often punched at Bivol's guard instead of trying to reach his head. This is a lower commitment form of punching that is harder to counter. Here, Bivol counters a jab thrown at his head. Canelo tries to jab the head by breaking his rhythm with the gazelle jab, but Bivol steps back and counters. Another possible reason for Bivol not countering much is that he's been hurt before, against Joe Smith Jr. in particular, when he decided to sit down and counter while an opponent was punching their way in. Bivol was wobbled on 2 occasions. And there are others that barely missed. Once he had Bivol near the ropes, Canelo would usually throw a few chap jabs to back him up, then sit down on a big rear hand power punch aimed at Bivol's head or lead shoulder. Bivol made sure his back was touching the ropes, kept his guard tight, and leaned into Canelo's punch, even when squared up. Bivol used Canelo's commitment to power to help him escape. He pushed his back into the ropes at the moment of impact, using the elasticity of the ropes to rebound off. As he was rebounding, he would push his lead hand into Canelo's center line while Canelo was heavy over his lead foot, then circle or pivot left. Let's first look at the most extreme example of this tactic, where Bivol essentially jumps back into the ropes. It clearly shows how the elasticity of the ropes is used for the rebound. Tap jabs to set up the power punch. Bivol steps back into the ropes as the punch lands. Double tap jab, then overhand right aimed at the lead shoulder. Canelo's head is over his lead foot. His weight is completely shifted to his left side to the point he barely keeps rear foot contact with the canvas. This gives Bivol an opening to escape out to his left. Also notice how close Canelo gets on this punch. His lead foot is even with Bivol's. When Canelo got this close, Bivol would plant his lead foot, shift his weight over to his left leg, then pivot his right foot back while pushing off of Canelo. We'll see this footwork from Bivol again later in the fight when Canelo starts infighting. Guard tight with back touching the ropes. By squaring up, Bivol's lead hand isn't in position to immediately push, but since Canelo was front foot heavy and leaning left, Bivol's jab can still accomplish the same goal of pushing into Canelo's center line to let him escape. Also note Bivol's tactical discipline. He gets caught by the rear hook, but still makes sure to jab and step over. Canelo's lead uppercut gets Bivol to square up. Canelo gets very close, so Bivol pivots his rear foot and leaps around.
Bivol's not much of a body puncher, but it's that right hand right there. Great job backing up, not letting Canelo punt his staying off the ropes, just like that.
Shuffling his back into the ropes at the last second lets Bivol rebound and escape. Canelo committing to the hook here lets Bivol avoid the corner. It's clear that Canelo prioritized a big right hand over keeping Bivol on the ropes. It raises the question of how many more punches would Canelo have avoided taking if he had prioritized keeping Bivol on the ropes. Every defensive tactic has its vulnerabilities. This method of escaping off the ropes uses precise timing and positioning in order to rebound after the power punch. Sometimes Canelo's extended lead hand changed the timing of Bivol's rebound off the ropes. Here Bivol barely avoids this uppercut. The jab getting through throws off Bivol's timing. Bivol's back is pushing into the ropes before Canelo's rear hand. Bivol eats the uppercut, but still times his jab and footwork to escape off the ropes. Here's another example of the third tap jab throwing off Bivol's rebound timing, setting up the uppercut. Another downside of this tactic is that it required precise positioning. If Bivol wasn't firmly against the ropes at the moment of impact, he couldn't rebound and escape. Bivol's a foot from the ropes when he first shells up from Canelo's jab feint. Since he wasn't firmly against the ropes at the moment of impact, he gets pushed into the ropes instead of rebounding off. By limiting his power and staying upright, Canelo made it harder for Bivol to rebound effectively. As a result, Canelo is able to pin Bivol with his lead hand and set up an uppercut. By staying upright on his hook, Canelo doesn't expose his center line to Bivol's push. Bivol's push goes directly forward, and Canelo can easily adjust with a small step back. He then extends his lead hand into Bivol's face to pin him for another hook. Canelo commits more on the next hook, and Bivol is able to rebound and push off to escape. Bivol's back barely touches the ropes before the punch makes contact. Canelo puts less power on it and doesn't smother himself. Instead of Bivol rebounding, the punch pushes him into the ropes, and Canelo can attack again. In the 8th round, Canelo started attempting to get inside. When they were in center ring, he usually tried to walk into infighting range. When Bivol was on the ropes, he tried to get inside after punching. Canelo's infighting stance is very similar to his front foot heavy high guard stance, but he also pushed into Bivol with his forehead and gloves. This pushing pressure made it harder for Bivol to circle off the ropes, though he was still able to make space with tight pivots. Canelo would also attack as soon as Bivol separated to create distance. Canelo's first attempt to get inside after a power punch fails, Bivol's rebound helped him escape. On Canelo's next attempt, he stays upright, but is too far left to keep Bivol trapped. Canelo throws a hard rear hook, then frames his rear arm into Bivol horizontally. The forearm frame gives Canelo an extra moment to recenter his torso and prevents Bivol from pushing him as far or directing the push into his center line. Canelo is able to quickly readjust his feet and stay in range to attack. Bivol's size advantage and understanding of body control made slipping inside harder to do. He gets his forearm on Canelo's neck and steps his lead foot back to lean his body weight into him. Bivol starts throwing the lead uppercut between the guard when Canelo walks in. This time, Canelo doesn't follow his tap jabs with a power shot, instead trying to walk in with his guard high. This gives Bivol time to throw the lead uppercut again. Level change feint draws Canelo's parry and slip left. The horizontal forearm frame is an effective infighting technique against a high guard. It pins both of Bivol's arms to his body, leaving Canelo's other hand free to punch. Lead hook as Bivol backs away. The next sequence is Canelo's most effective use of infighting in this fight. This time he gets inside behind punches while staying upright. Immediately after punching, Canelo stays inside and keeps his left arm and head pressed against Bivol. As we saw previously, with Canelo in infighting range, Bivol can't circle out. Instead, he immediately turns his hips towards Canelo to shift his weight onto his left leg, then pushes off his right foot to pivot. Canelo's rear hand is low, free to attack when space opens up. Canelo's pressure prevents Bivol from fully pivoting. Bivol tries again as Canelo steps over, maintaining forehead contact. As Bivol steps back, Canelo stops to throw a rear hook, then continues forward to get back inside with head and lead glove contact. From here, Canelo uses the leverage he gets from his stance and the T position to push Bivol to the ropes. But first, let's go back and notice the subtle footwork adjustments Bivol makes to avoid the corner. The first 2 times Bivol repositions, he takes small steps with his left foot and big steps with his right foot. This gets his back off the ropes, but moves him near the corner. Aware that he's about to be put in the corner, Bivol steps his lead foot out wide, then a quick rear foot step, then pivots his hips to square his torso up as his lead foot steps back to a southpaw stance. Lead foot steps out wide. Quick rear foot step. Hips pivot as lead foot steps back, squaring his torso up so his back touches the ropes. This footwork adjustment ensures Canelo's forward push doesn't trap him in the corner. Canelo stops moving forward in order to create punching space and pin Bivol to the ropes. Canelo regains head and left glove contact, but backs off when Bivol pushes with his right arm. The sequence repeats: the lead hand pin, rear hand punch, infighting, then Bivol pushes. Canelo commits more to this punch, but doesn't have enough power for Bivol to rebound off of it. Another combo without overcommitting to power. Canelo's lead hand pins and blinds Bivol, perhaps because he feels vulnerable from the blind or he wants to get off the ropes ASAP to stay competitive in the round. Bivol steps left before Canelo has even thrown his rear hand. Since his feet are not set, Canelo's hook easily breaks through his guard. By not overcommitting to his power punches and returning to his infighting stance after, Canelo was prioritizing the battle for positioning that occurred immediately after his attack. Previously, only Bivol had been prioritizing positioning with his tactic of rebounding off the ropes, while Canelo had been prioritizing landing his power punch. However, aside from the successful sequence along the ropes, Canelo was too tired by this point to break through Bivol's guard and back him up to the ropes from center ring. Bivol recognized this and was willing to stand and infight in center ring, content to land lead uppercuts, push for space and punch, and counter when Canelo's hands were low after punching.
This is a much better round for Canelo.
Canelo had some success in the 12th round, keeping Bivol on the ropes with infighting, though his punches didn't land cleanly.
I think it's safe to say, though, that Canelo has to win the 12th round. Bruising body attack here from Canelo. But he's being brought up. Bivol is accustomed to that power, and he's strong. He's a natural light heavyweight. Yes, sir, Joe. When it gets to a point where Bivol's hitting him just that will, and he's a bigger guy, it's almost very nerve-wracking for Canelo.
Without reliable use of his jab, Canelo expended a lot of energy on power punches that often didn't land cleanly, just to put Bivol on the ropes. However, once he had Bivol on the ropes, he prioritized setting up big right hands, even though it allowed Bivol to escape. Canelo may have prioritized loading up on big right hands for a few reasons. He may have wanted to avoid slowing the pace down along the ropes, preventing the possibility that Bivol finds a way to escape without taking any punches. And landing a big shot might also hurt Bivol or weaken his jab by targeting the lead arm. Whatever the reason, the more time Bivol spent off the ropes, the more explosive footwork and punching Canelo had to use to get him back there. By the time Canelo tried to adapt to keep Bivol on the ropes longer, he was too fatigued to force him out of center ring. On top of that, Bivol was landing straight punches to the body throughout the fight. Since Bivol set up his jab by timing Canelo's rhythms, the obvious place to start is to make sure his movement is less rhythmic. Canelo minimized his torso rhythm more after the 3rd round, but he maintained the same footwork and guard rhythms, which Bivol repeatedly took advantage of. Deliberately using his stance rhythm to bait and counter Bivol's jab is also an option, though it seemed Canelo didn't want to counterpunch against Bivol. Bivol's single most effective tactic was probably his circling jabs that positioned him to attack Canelo's center line with power punches. After doing so, he could often chain multiple combos together with feints, extending his lead hand, and good punch selection to keep Canelo off balance. If Canelo was able to prevent one or two of those combinations from happening in close rounds, it may have swung those rounds in his favor. Similarly, after getting put onto his back foot, not overcorrecting on his next lead foot step would also have prevented some of Bivol's combos. While Canelo only attempted one pull counter on Bivol's jab and it didn't land, it did keep Bivol from circling left in that instance. He may have had success shutting down Bivol's circling more just by attempting more right hand pull counters. There were also a few instances where, after his forward lean, Canelo would roll right and step in instead of pulling back for his usual stance rhythm. This gave him the outside angle for his right hand. Doing this more often would have made his movement less repetitive, possibly making Bivol more hesitant to attack. Let's look at these examples. While this position puts Canelo at a similar angle to when Bivol has circled left to expose his center line, the difference here is that Canelo has proactively taken this angle, putting the burden on Bivol to react. Since Canelo is in close range, Bivol is at risk of getting countered if he attacks with his lead hand here. Canelo attacks when Bivol steps back. The right hook prevents Bivol from potentially circling left with punches after he stepped back. They're nearly squared up, but Canelo's punches have put his weight farther forward, so his push into Bivol's center line forces him backwards. Another right hook in close range. So why didn't Canelo roll more in this fight? This footwork could be risky for Canelo. Stepping his rear foot out farther momentarily gives Bivol a T position. If Bivol lands a hard punch at this moment, Canelo's chin is very vulnerable here. It could be that Canelo deemed this head movement too risky to use regularly. However, since Bivol tended to play it safe with Canelo in close range, it might have worked. One of the only other times Canelo took an outside angle, with 30 seconds left, he landed a good punch after. Canelo's lead foot stays inside Bivol's lead foot, but his rear foot is outside. Lastly, another good adaptation could have been for Canelo to utilize infighting throughout the entire fight. While Bivol was landing lead uppercuts that forced Canelo to reset, they weren't particularly dangerous. Canelo also had decent success framing horizontally with his forearms on Bivol's high guard. It likely would have been harder to do in center ring during the early rounds when Bivol's footwork was more active, but he may have had success keeping Bivol on the ropes. One risk with the infighting approach is the risk of counters if he doesn't commit to enough power. If Canelo did attempt to get inside along the ropes throughout the entire fight, he'd likely need to mix between his usual tactic of tap jabs to set up a big power punch and the combos with less power he used to get inside in order to keep Bivol guessing. Alright, that's the end of part 3. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this breakdown helpful. Let me know in the comments if you like the format of these videos, and feel free to recommend another fight you'd like to see analyzed.